today we'll discuss about miscellaneous sensory tracts. And this group consists of spinotactal tract, spinotactal, spinoreticular, spino-olivary, and then visceral afferent pathways. So first of these tracts is the spinotactal tract. First order nerve fibers carrying impulses enter the spinal cord through the posterior nerve root. So first order nerve fibers carrying impulses enter the spinal cord through the posterior nerve root. And these synapses with neurons, in the posterior gray column of the spinal cord. Posterior gray column of the spinal cord. These are the first order nerve fibers and the spinal cord, the posterior nerve root, and the synapse with second order neurons in the posterior gray column of the spinal cord. Second order nerve fibers cross over to the opposite side. You see, second order nerve fibers cross over to the opposite side to enter the anterolateral white column of the opposite side. So the tract is formed on the opposite side. So the tract ascends in the spinal cord, and then enters the medulla oblongata. In the medulla oblongata, it joins the spinal lemniscus. So spinotactal tract, on entering the medulla oblongata, it joins the spinal lemniscus. We know spinal lemniscus consists of three tracts: anterior spinothalamic, lateral spinothalamic, and spinotactal tract. So it joins spinal lemniscus and enters the medulla oblongata. The tract ascends to the pons, midbrain, and then terminate in the superior colliculus in the midbrain. So terminate in the superior colliculus in the midbrain. So this tract, it terminates into the superior colliculus in the midbrain. What is the function of this tract? This tract, it forms afferent pathway. It forms afferent pathway for spino-visual reflexes. It forms afferent pathway for spino-visual reflexes, and helps to turn or move head and eyes towards the source of stimulation, and helps to bring or turn head and eyes towards the source of stimulation. So helps to turn head and eyes toward the source of stimulation. Say I am standing, someone touches me on the back. So my head and eyes will turn back reflexively. And this is the spino-visual reflex. So my head and eyes are turned reflexly when somebody touches me from behind. This is the one of the spino-visual reflex. And in this reflex, and in the turning of the head and eyes towards the source of stimulation, the role of the spinotactile tract. Our next tract in this group is spino-reticular tract. Spino-reticular tract. First order nerve fibers enter the spinal cord through the posterior nerve root. So first order nerve fibers enter the spinal cord through the posterior nerve root. As these nerve fibers synapse with second order neurons in the posterior column. So the synapse with the second order neurons in the posterior column. So from here, second order nerve fibers arise. From here, second order nerve fibers arise which do not cross over. So the tract fibers don't cross over. So these are sent in the spinal cord to form the tract. To form the tract, which is spino-reticular tract. Spino-reticular tract. The tract fibers terminate onto the neurons in the reticular formation of the medulla, pons, and midbrain. So the tract fibers terminate onto the neurons in the reticular formation of the medulla, pons, and the midbrain. This is the spino-reticular tract. This tract, it carries sensory impulses to the reticular formation. It carries sensory impulses to the reticular formation. And these impulses control the level of alertness, consciousness. So the impulses carried by the spino-reticular tract, it influences, it controls the level of consciousness or level of alertness. This is the spino-reticular tract. The next tract in this group is spino-olivary tract. Spino-olivary tract. First order nerve fibers carrying impulses from cutaneous and proprioceptive organs, receptors. So first order nerve fibers carrying impulses from cutaneous and proprioceptive receptors enter the spinal cord through the posterior nerve root. These enter the spinal cord through the posterior nerve root. And these synapse with second order neurons, in the posterior column or spinal cord. And from here, second order nerve fibers arise. Which cross over to the opposite side. You see, these cross over to the opposite side, to the opposite anterolateral white column to form the tract. So second order nerve fibers arise which cross over to the opposite side to enter the anterolateral white column to form the tract on the opposite side. This is the spino-olivary tract formed after crossing over of second order nerve fibers. So the tract ascends to enter the medulla oblongata. The tract ascends to enter the medulla oblongata. In the medulla oblongata, the tract, it synapses into the inferior olivary nucleus. Right? So the tract fibers synapse into the inferior olivary nucleus. So from inferior olivary nucleus, third order nerve fibers arise. So from inferior olivary nucleus, third order nerve fibers arise, which enter the inferior cerebellar peduncle after crossing over. Right? So keep in mind that the third order nerve fibers arising from inferior olivary nucleus cross back to enter the inferior olivary, to enter the inferior cerebellar peduncle to go into the cerebellum. So third order nerve fibers arise from inferior olivary nucleus. These cross back to enter the inferior cerebellar peduncle to enter the cerebellum. So this tract, it comes from spinal cord, then synapses into the inferior olivary nucleus, and then after crossing over, it enters the inferior cerebellar peduncle to go into the cerebellum. So this is the pathway of the spino-olivary tract, which ultimately goes to the cerebellum. Of course, this tract, it conveys impulses from cutaneous and proprioceptive receptors to the inferior olivary nucleus and then to the cerebellum. Right? This is about the spino-olivary tract. It goes to the inferior olivary nucleus and then it goes to the cerebellum after crossing over. Keep in mind that the control of cerebellum or cerebellum receives impulses from the same side of the body. Cerebellum receives impulses from the same side of the body. Say crossing over occurs in the spinal cord. To go into cerebellum, again there is crossing over, so that the impulses from the same side of the body, it goes to the cerebellum. Now, in contrast, impulses to the cerebral cortex along sensory tracts, it carries impulses from the contralateral side. So to cerebral cortex, to sensory cortex, impulses are carried from the contralateral side to the sensory cortex. The next sensory tract in this group is visceral afferent pathways. Visceral afferent pathways. Impulses from the stretch receptors and pain receptors in the viscera of the thorax and abdomen. So impulses from the stretch receptors and pain receptors from the viscera of the thorax and abdomen enter the spinal cord along the first order nerve fibers. These enter the spinal cord along the first order nerve fibers. The synapse with second order neurons. The synapse with second order neurons in the posterior gray column. And then second order nerve fibers arise from here, which cross over to the opposite side, and these fibers carrying impulses from the stretch receptors and pain receptors in the viscera of thorax and abdomen. These join the spinothalamic tract. And then along the spinothalamic tract, the impulses are carried to the VPL, ventral, postal, lateral mucus of thalamus. So with the spinothalamic tract, impulses from the viscera of the thorax abdomen, these are carried to the VPL, ventral, postal, lateral mucus of thalamus. And then from here, impulses go to sensory cortex. From here, impulses go to the sensory cortex. So this was about the impulses from the stretch receptors and pain receptors in the viscera of the thorax and abdomen. So these are carried ultimately by spinothalamic tract to the sensory cortex. Impulses about the fullness of bladder before micturition. So impulses about the fullness of bladder before micturition and fullness of rectum before defecation are carried by dorsal column medial lemniscal system. So impulses about fullness of urinary bladder before micturition and impulses about the fullness of rectum before defecation are carried by dorsal column medial lemniscal system to the brain or sensory cortex. So this was about the visceral afferent pathways, and this was about the miscellaneous group of the sensory tract, which includes the spinotactile, spinoverticular, spino-olivary, and visceral afferent tract. Next, we discuss about the analgesia system. Analgesia system. So, analgesia system is pain control system. Is the pain control system in the central nervous system. It is the pain control system present in the central nervous system. We know sensitivity to pain varies in individuals. Pain sensitivity, it varies in individuals. Some individuals are more pain sensitive, some are less pain sensitive. Pain sensitivity partly depends upon the capability of analgesia system to suppress pain. So pain sensitivity partly depends upon capability of the analgesia system to suppress pain. What are the components of the analgesia system? Its components. The first component is periventricular nuclei. Periventricular nuclei present around the third ventricle. Present around the third ventricle are the periventricular nuclei. The next component is periaqueductal gray matter. Periaqueductal gray matter present around the aqueduct, cerebral aqueduct in the midbrain and upper cortex. So periaqueductal gray matter present around the cerebral aqueduct in the midbrain and upper cortex. And keep in mind, cerebral aqueduct, it connects the third ventricle with the fourth ventricle. It connects third ventricle with the fourth ventricle, and this is the cerebral aqueduct. So along this, there is periaqueductal gray matter. Periaqueductal gray matter. The next component of the system is Raphe Magnus nucleus. Raphe Magnus nucleus present in the lower part of midbrain, as well in the pons, lower pons, and upper medulla oblongata. So Raphe-Magnus nucleus present in the lower pons and upper medulla oblongata. These are the thin midline nuclei present in the lower pons and upper medulla oblongata. Now in the medulla oblongata, another group of neurons is also included in the analgesia system, and that is nucleus reticularis paragigantocellularis. Nucleus reticularis paragigantocellularis. It is long name that in the medulla oblongata, another part of the system and analgesia is nucleus reticularis paragigantocellularis. Nucleus reticularis paragigantocellularis. So, along with the Raphe-Magnus nucleus in the medulla, another component is nucleus reticularis paragigantocellularis. So the last part of this system analgesia is pain inhibitory complex in the dorsal horn of the spinal cord. Pain inhibitory complex in the dorsal horn of the spinal cord. So pain inhibitory complex in the dorsal horn of the spinal cord. So these are the components of the analgesia system. Now about the neurotransmitters released in the analgesia system. Neurotransmitters released in the analgesia system. Nerve fibers which pass from periventricular nuclei. Nerve fibers which pass from periventricular nuclei to periaqueductal gray matter, and then nerve fibers which pass from periaqueductal gray matter to Raphe-Magnus nucleus, nerve fibers which pass from periaqueductal gray matter to Raphe-Magnus nucleus. So these two touch fibers, these release enkephalin at the nerve endings. So fibers from periventricular nuclei to periaqueductal gray matter, and nerve fibers from periaqueductal gray matter to Raphe-Magnus nucleus, these release enkephalin. And then nerve fibers which pass from Raphe-Magnus nucleus to other parts of the brain, and also to the pain inhibitory complex, in the dorsal horn of spinal cord. These nerve fibers from the Raphe-Magnus nucleus to the pain inhibitory complex in the dorsal horn of spinal cord, these release serotonin. And then in the pain inhibitory complex in the dorsal horn of spinal cord, the neurons release enkephalin. Right? So the neurons in the pain inhibitory complex in the dorsal horn spinal cord, which synapse with incoming pain pathways, incoming pain fibers, A delta fibers, C fibers. So these neurons in the pain inhibitory complex, these release enkephalin at the nerve endings. Right? So this was about the neurotransmitters in the system of analgesia, and the main neurotransmitters, these are enkephalin. Enkephalin. So there are different types of enkephalin. Enkephalin, 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 beta endorphin, dynorphin, So these are called morphine-like or opiate neurotransmitters. These are called morphine-like or opiate neurotransmitters. Enkephalin, enkephalin, beta endorphin, and dynorphin. These are called opiate neurotransmitters or morphine-like neurotransmitters. Now keep in mind that stimulation of components of analgesia system, say you stimulate the periventricular nuclei, you stimulate the periaqueductal gray matter, you stimulate the raphe magnus nucleus. So their stimulation results into suppression of pain, analgesia. So you stimulate the components of analgesia system, there will be analgesia or suppression of the pain. Both type of pain, I mean fast pain and slow pain, both are suppressed when you stimulate the analgesia system. So both pain, fast pain, slow pain, are suppressed when you stimulate the analgesia system. Moreover, reflexes activated by pain impulses are also inhibited. So reflexes activated by the pain impulses are also inhibited. Say withdrawal reflex or flexor reflex is inhibited by the analgesia system. I told you that the opiate or morphine-like neurotransmitters, enkephalin, beta endorphin, dynorphin, right? You know, morphine is a potent analgesic. So morphine inhibits pain, suppresses pain. How? By binding with morphine receptors or opiate receptors in the brainstem. So morphine exerts analgesia, pain suppression, by binding with opiate receptors or morphine receptors in the brainstem. And keep in mind, the enkephalin also bind with the morphine receptors to produce analgesia. So keep in mind that enkephalin also bind with the morphine or opiate receptors to produce analgesia. Right? So this system of analgesia consisting of these components, and which is the main neurotransmitter, enkephalin, including the beta endorphin, dynorphin, and type of the enkephalin. Now in the analgesia system, the last component is pain inhibitory complex. in the dorsal horn of the spinal cord. And in this pain inhibiting complex, the neurons release enkephalin. And these neurons, they have got synapse with the incoming pain fibers. I can say that incoming pain fibers, A delta fibers, C fibers, synapse with these neurons, and these neurons release big neurotransmitter and caffeine. So there is presynaptic inhibition of pain impulses at the entry point into the spinal cord. So keep in mind, there is presynaptic inhibition of pain impulses at the entry point into the spinal cord. So pain impulses are inhibited at the entry point into the spinal cord, because in the dorsal horn of spinal cord there is a pain inhibitory complex containing enkephalin neurons. So pain impulses are inhibited by presynaptic inhibition at the entry point into the spinal cord. So this was about the analgesia system, which suppresses pain. So both types of pain, fast and slow pain, are suppressed by the analgesia system. Moreover, reflexes activated by the pain impulses are also suppressed, say flexor reflex or withdrawal reflex. These are suppressed by the analgesia system. You have heard about the acupuncture. It is a traditional technique in China to suppress pain. They use fine needles to suppress pain. Now it is thought that analgesia produced by the acupuncture is thought to be due to release of enkephalin. So pain relief or pain control by the Chinese technique of acupuncture involves the release of analgesia system, and the release of the enkephalin from the analgesia system. So the acupuncture technique involves the release of enkephalin from the system analgesia, and this results into the pain suppression by the acupuncture.